Loosely, steroid 101, things to look before your first cycle, effectively. But there will be things and bits and bats that will apply to all cycles. So, you've decided you're going to take steroids. There's several things in an ideal world that you would look at before you would start. First thing, or one of the things, these are in no particular order of priority, by the way, would be your current diet and training. The more effective these are, the more effective the drugs are going to be. The lower dose drugs you can use, therefore the less impact from a health point of view. So, you don't have to be an expert on training, but you need to be in a position within your training, well, ideally, should I say, you should be in a position in your training where your training is effective. So you are getting results, and you do feel like you're progressing, and you do feel like you are in control of your training, and your training is going well. There's no point considering going on a cycle if you've got injuries. It's a bit stupid, really, because you're building on a poor foundation. Same with diet. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, but you should have the basics covered. You should be able to control your body fat levels, and you should know roughly where you are with things. Now, regarding body fat, it is not essential that you are lean or leaner. However, body fat has androgen receptors in it. So if you have a higher percentage of body fat, then a percentage of the gear that you take is going to get bound within the receptors in the body fat. And not only that, the fatter you are, the more you will hold with water retention. The leaner you are, the less water retention you'll get. So why is this an issue? Well, if you're lean and you only put on 7-10 pounds of water retention, it's not so bad. But if you're carrying 30% body fat and you put on 2 stone of water retention, that's a lot of stress on your body, it's a lot of stress on your heart, and it's excess weight gain that you don't really need. So, there's another reason to try and be leaner. And plain and simple, it's easy to see the results. Simple as that. You know, if you are leaner, you will see the results of what you're doing easier, quicker, and therefore you'll be more motivated by what's going on. But that's not to say that a higher percentage of body fat, you can't still make gains. You start kill recomp because you can. So, you know, it's not the end of the world if your body fat isn't the lowest. And also that would also depend on what sort of sport you were into. You know, strongman and powerlifters, to a certain degree, there's less concern about body fat levels or overall excess weight levels, until obviously it impacts your ability to perform. So, there's two things there. Commitment. You know, if you work a job that's seasonal, or you work a job that has particularly busy periods that you know are coming up, then why would you bother starting your first cycle, or any cycle for that matter, if you know you're going to struggle to commit to the gym? It's pointless. Now, there's a difference between running a low dose to try and maintain some muscle mass because you know you're going to struggle to get to the gym as often as you like, to taking a cycle that's aimed at developing growth, or you're using as preservation because you're dieting. So you've got to look at the circumstances that's going on and whether, you know, is it reasonable? Don't throw this shit in your system just for the sake of it. If you're going to use it, make sure it works. Have a purpose, have a need. You need to be consistent before you even start. And more so, you need to be consistent when you come off. Otherwise, you're not going to maintain what you've created. Another thing is health checks. Now, before your very first cycle, I would always recommend doing a full hormone palette. Because that's where you have your baselines. You then know what your natural levels are for all your hormones, and therefore you can always check if you return to normal post-cycle. If you haven't done that, then at least get one done before your cycle, and you know roughly you've returned to where you were before the cycle. So if you've done cycles before, you never got an initial one done, then all you can base it on is what your current values are. It's not the end of the world. And a health check. You know, certain conditions aren't symptomatic. Certain conditions can be sitting there in the background and not really cause you any problems, and still you start trying to push things. So it's always worth getting kidney function checked, liver function checked, blood values checked, and particularly lipids, cholesterols. Because they're the one things that all steroids manipulate, and they're the one things that you will struggle to keep in balance while on gear. So as a result, you want to make sure you've not got an existing problem before you start. And be honest, and that's the difficult one. Take photographs, take measurements, whatever you want to do, but be honest. Don't be conning yourself that you're 20%, you're 15% body fat when you know really you're 22 or 23. Don't estimate, check, make sure for certain where you are. You know? Be honest with yourself about your commitment, be honest with yourself about your training, be honest with yourself about your diet. Oh, my diet's good. When really, no, it's not. It will serve you a long way if you're honest about where you are with things and where you wanted to go with things. Now, so you've decided now, you've done your health checks, your training's pretty decent, it's quite consistent, and your diet's not bad at all. It's not the best in the world, but it's definitely good enough. So you've looked, you've got no real major problems coming up. So you start looking. So you plan your cycle. Now, depending on your level, where you are, what you're doing, this could be a million different things. But once you've made that decision, you need to purchase your drugs. Now, two things I advise here is try and purchase all the drugs that you're going to need for your cycle. Not just your steroids, but also your preventive drugs, your AIs, estrogen management, whatever you're using, and your PCT drugs. Because you do not want to get to the end of your cycle and then suddenly find you can't get hold of the PCT drugs you particularly need. So I'd get everything in advance and then you're covered. It's also worth that if you know a drug can have a certain symptom, but you may or may not suffer with it, is to buy in the preventive measures for that as well. For example, DECA. You may not have a problem with prolactin or progesterone, but just in case, get some Kerber, because Kerber is a fucking nightmare to get hold of. So if you haven't got it, and suddenly you start getting progesterone-related sides, you're going to be scrabbling around trying to get hold of something to combat that, and all the time the sides are getting worse. So be prepared. You don't use it, save it for the next time. And it's got pretty long shelf lives. Or maybe if you've got a relationship with your supplier as such, you'll be able to give it him back and get your money back or swap it for something else. And keep it simple. For most users, complex advanced systems are not required. You don't need to take shitloads of different stuff. You don't need to be worrying about tamoxifen slightly reducing IGF-1. It's going to have no fucking impact on you with where you are with your development. So keep it simple, keep it basic. The less things you've got in the pot, the easier it is to manage and the easier it is to know what's going wrong. If it does go wrong. You know, if you throw in, for argument's sake, you're on your third cycle and you're doing trend for the first time, and then you're throwing in IGF-1, you're throwing CJC 1295, and you're throwing in some MK677 and numerous other bits and bats, and you've never done any of them, then you have no idea what is causing what and what is giving you the results. So you're better just adding one thing in at a time. Now, with any changes you make, you're looking at roughly about 28 days for your body to fully deal and decide what it's doing with it. So don't be too quick to judge. You know, if you make a change and you get a reaction within a day or two, give it a few more days, give it a week, give it 2 weeks and see. Do not do knee-jerk reactions, because you'll start bouncing things all over the place and you can get yourself in a real mess. The amount of people I've seen that start to get estrogen issues or thought they were getting estrogen issues, slammed in the AIs, didn't get the result they thought they were going to get within 48 hours, so slammed in even more, crashed estrogen through the floor, that bounced something else, progesterone shot through the roof, and all sorts of problems then started to ensue. So keep it simple, don't knee-jerk reactions, small changes, assess, review, adapt. A lot easier. From the point you start your cycle, I recommend a check at 4 weeks, whatever. Now, there's no point checking test levels. We know they're going to be elevated, or they bloody should be if your gear is any good. So estrogen levels would be my first point of call. Normally I wouldn't bother with progesterone levels unless I was suspect that there was also something going on there. But definitely blood values, kidney, liver function, RBC, all those sort of things, and obviously your lipids as well. Just keep an eye on things. Usually at that 4 week point, if you're good and you're only running a 12-week course, you wouldn't really need to do another check unless something happened symptom-wise. So you generally, once you've got that initial check-in, you know where you're standing. It's a great way to just tweak your estrogen management as well. You know, most people would go on estrogen management just by feel. Now, to give you an example, most people, when they go over 200 with estrogen levels, will start to have severe symptoms, severe water retention, even gyno. I've had mine at 350 and been symptom free. So it's very much down to the individual and how you react to certain levels. So I wouldn't go by feel. Sometimes you have to, but if you can, test. Get it in black and white and know for definite what's going on in your body. And don't be over mad at suppressing estrogen. It has a lot of benefits. It is quite a useful hormone. So control it, yes. Don't think that low estrogen levels is going to be beneficial for you. It's not. I like to run mine top end of range or just above range, depending on what I'm doing. Now, I mentioned quality of gear, and obviously this is a big one. It's difficult. You can get it tested. There are a few services out there that'll do it for you. Or you can just go by reputation. But obviously you want to do as much as you can to ensure that you get decent stuff. It's as simple as that. And again, yeah, you to a degree you can go by feel, but that's not always an indication, particularly with certain drugs. You know, Masteron's quite mild, EQ's quite mild, and it's not always something you can rely on that you're going to feel a massive change, particularly if you're running 2 or 3 compounds. So the ideal way would be to test. Second to that is just go to someone who has got a very, very good reputation and use a lab that's got a very, very good reputation. Now, so you go through your cycle and remember these things. It's progressive overload. If you start your cycle with the same rep ranges and you're still using those same rep ranges and same weights at midway point, then you're not really progressing as much as you should. Everything should be increasing. And that goes for calories too. If you keep a good assessment on body fat levels and measurements and pictures, you can review your calories sort of every 3 to 4 weeks and find out if you feel you need to increase. The cleaner your diet, the higher you'll be able to run your calories. And I know that sounds wrong, but trust me from experience, I can run very, very high calories if I'm clean. If I eat a bit of shit, my calories have to drop down quite significantly to combat that. It has a dramatic effect on how my body reacts. The faster you can get your metabolic rate up, the more calories you can consume, which means the more nutrition you'll have available for building muscle mass. So, we've done our cycle, and we're going to come off. Be prepared for weight loss, and some size loss, and some strength loss. Predominantly this will be water, but accept that it may happen. Don't panic when it does, don't get into a tiff when it does, just do the best you can at maintaining. Now, well-designed PCT should in most cases ensure that you maintain pretty much all the actual muscle mass you put on. Be realistic. Your body weight and size at the end of cycle is not all muscle mass. There will be some glycogen retention, which gear improves obviously, and water retention, and a few other factors playing into this. So you do your PCT, and then 3-4 weeks post PCT you will test again. Hormone health isn't so much of an issue at this point, but you might as well throw it in if you're doing it for the cost. But particularly hormones, you want to make sure and see that you return to where you were previously, or as near as damn it. Now, do not start a cut. I don't care what you're doing. If you do a PCT and you come off, you do not want to be starting a cut. It takes a while for your body to accept the gains you have created. This varies with every individual. It can be a month, 2 months, 3 months. But the point is, until your body accepts that new size and muscle mass as its set point, any restriction in calorie is going to cause your body to just offload that muscle mass as quick as anything, because it doesn't regard it as being part of you. It regards it as being extra, and it will dump it as quick as it can. So give it time to accept, and you need to maintain your training intensity, and you need to maintain your diet. If anything, at this point, intensity and diet are even more important. So many guys go on cycle, everything's squeaky clean, then they come off and they binge and they stop training and everything goes down the toilet, and then they wonder why they get fat and they wonder why they lose the gains. You've got to maintain what you've been doing previously if you want to maintain that muscle mass. It's as simple as that. How much can be maintained? It varies from person to person. What I tend to find is, personally, I will hold pretty much all gains for 6 months without even very much effort whatsoever, even with training being substandard or diet being substandard. But then I start to get a dip, and then it starts to drop off. Most people aren't going to spend 6 months natural anyway. They're going to be going back on cycle. Now, regards next cycle. When you've done your PCT, you do 3-4 weeks, you make sure your levels are back to where they need to be. If they are, I'd recommend you leave at least another 4 weeks before you consider going back on cycle. Generally what I look at is 12 weeks on, 4 weeks PCT, 4 weeks then test, 4 weeks nothing at all, then start your cycle again. That way it takes 24 weeks to do a cycle and a full PCT, and time off before you start your next cycle. So effectively you'll get 2 cycles in a year. Now if you opt for blast cruise, which is a personal choice, then your cruise should mimic natural levels. So we are looking at 100, 150 mg a week tops, not 250 a week, and definitely nothing in excess of that. They are not cruise doses. They are low dose cycles. And you got to remember, the longer you are on this shit, the more chance there is of long-term damage. Particularly stuff like cholesterol manipulation and plaque buildup. So, if you're going to cruise, you need to periodically test general blood markers and just make sure everything's okay. Doesn't have to be every 4 weeks. You can look at every 2 months, 3 months, depending on how long your cruise is, but you do need to keep an eye on things. You know, even people that are on TRT have regular checks to see how the body is coping with that influx of drug. And you're not testing your hormones continuously, so your TR dose is going to be a bit guesswork anyway. So it's definitely worth just keeping an eye on things. And that's really it, you know, just keep it simple, keep control, and just be honest about what you're doing and what you're seeing. Don't con yourself. You know, the amount of people that are, I'm natural. Oh yeah? Oh yeah, I'm only doing a meal a week. You're not natural then. Don't lie. Don't lie to yourself. The more honest you are about where you are and what you're doing, the better you'll achieve. Because you won't be conning yourself and blindsiding yourself with bullshit, and you'd be shocked how many people do it. You know, we all make excuses for poor performance. Not just to people around us, but also to ourselves. We justify poor performance because of one thing or another. We've all done it. I do it. Everybody does it. But the truth is, you do that, and then that becomes the norm. And then that, you know, oh, I did that 180 bench. Oh, yeah, it was in good form. No, the fact that you bounced it off your chest. But then it won't be long before that style of form becomes the norm. And then all your working's shit. So it's worthwhile periodically just stopping yourself and having a look. Sort of giving yourself a review. If you're not strong enough mentally to do it yourself, or you don't trust yourself to do it yourself, get a training partner or a friend to do it. It's just be prepared that, you know, what you think might not be the case. I've made excuses about body fat level for years. Truth was, I was a fat fucker. Still am a fat fucker. Bottom line is, I'm not concerned with it enough to do anything about it. I'm leaner than I have been, granted there, but I'm still far from lean. Just how it is. So be honest and be realistic. For most people, we're not going to make massive gains off your first cycle. It is possible, people do make ridiculous amounts of gains, and I would strive for that, but don't be disappointed if you don't achieve it. As long as you're trying your best, then you've got the most you could have got out of that cycle, and certain factors are beyond your control, unfortunately, so it's just as it is. Anyway, I hope that's some use, and I'll speak to you guys soon.